Hello, good evening and welcome to Newsline Live. Now then, the port city is obviously captured everyone's imagination, as much for its potential as
benefits
for
to
the
Republic of Sri Lanka.
And
We've got here with us a
not so much
officer
about
of
the
the
controversy, but the
Advocata
potential
Institute, the
benefits
Chief
to
Operating Officer, in fact, Dananat Fernando. Very good evening to you, Dananat.
Good evening, Faraz.
Now then, if the main points of sovereignty and transparency as well are addressed, the main points being sovereignty and governance and transparency are adequately addressed, if those two or three matters are adequately addressed, how would the port city project benefit the Republic of Sri Lanka in terms of transfer of skills and employment and so on? How does that all work? How will it pan out?
For us, this port city comes under this concept called special economic zones. So when you have a special economic zone, it will have a separate regulatory system which is conducive for businesses to operate more faster and productively. And that's where it's going to come the economic benefits for the Republic of Sri Lanka. Now the current situation is our business regulation is so cumbersome and so inefficient, and you know how difficult it is to do business in Sri Lanka. So if we get a special economic zone, it could be port city or any other economic zone, special economic zone, then there will be number one, employment opportunities, because there will be investment coming in, and when the investment is there will be more businesses establishing in Sri Lanka, so there will be employment opportunities for Sri Lanka. That's side number one. Side number two is there will be knowledge transferage from the professionals who are going to come and work here. That would be foreigners all over the world, and that knowledge transfer will take place. That's two sides. And also, if we set the taxation thing right, I mean, I'm not expecting to have higher taxation, but also not tax exemptions for 25 years, but you have a consistent tax policy where you earn money and you pay a share of your taxes, then that will have the government revenue, and which we can do the other infrastructure projects, pay our poor some sort of a take care of our poor people, most vulnerable people.
Well, empower them to help themselves.
Exactly. So that's how these knock-on effects going to take place. It could be port city or it could be any special economic zone. That's the broader concept and the idea.
So these are the gilded prospects that await the Republic of Sri Lanka, our country, and we obviously the people will look forward to this. But it is. Do you agree that it's essential that we get the basics right?
Exactly.
The beginning right?
Exactly. The basics we have to get the basics right, because that's only how we can create and position the port city, or for that matter any special economic zone right. Because I read something that India also sometimes they haven't also got it right in certain their special economic zones, because if you try to position it as like a tax haven, okay, you don't need to pay taxes for 25 years and you get free land and all that you're not getting the quality investments, because it's also the quality versus quantity. To attract the right foreign investments, you have to position it right, saying basically you have to position it as a place where you can do businesses easily, because at the moment we are at the 99th position of the ease of doing business index. India is in their 60s. So if you compare the region, Malaysia is ahead of us, Vietnam is ahead of us. So if you have $500 million to $1 billion in your hand, you have so many options to invest in the region if you want to move it to this region. So in that sense, they are not going to consider about the tax holidays, because you are paying a tax when you earn a profit. So we have to position it as a ease of doing business place, where people can get things done easily and bring economic prosperity and economic freedom for the people of Sri Lanka.
And I just want to move on to other matters of the economy. Now then, about 30% of Sri Lanka's population is involved in or engaged in agriculture. which is contributing, let's say, around 8% of GDP. Now, what are the can you name three sort of policy initiatives that is linked to this sort of data analytics and the technology surrounding agriculture that the government should actively implement, or are they implementing, to see a visible shift from sustainable agriculture to from subsistence level agriculture to sustainable agriculture?
For us, the main problem in our agriculture is our land policy. 80% of the land is owned by the government, and if you ask any businessman to get a land to cultivate something, it's a horrendous process. You have to get a permit, you have to go to the Grama Seva Niladhari, you have to go to the district secretariat, and you have to go back and forth multiple times because they are issuing you a license. Because 80% of the land is owned by the government, and they are going to keep that discretionary power and saying, okay, you want to cultivate, okay, I'll give you a license. For that also you have to spend a lot of time. The other problem is when you give a license, you can't monetize it, because you can't take you don't have the access for finance
based on the license.
So you have to have a deed to access for capital. Right. Yeah, you go to the bank, you say, okay, I own this land, so why don't you give me a loan so I can do productive agriculture?
Yeah.
So that is the main problem, as you very correctly said. 30% of the people of Sri Lanka is engaged in agriculture, but it contributes only 8%. Because our agriculture is extremely unproductive. And at the same time, even if I have the license, government say, okay, we give this Bim Savia, this Savia, this Bhumi, Swarna Bhumi, Jaya Bhumi, all those different titles when every government takes their rotation. And they, if I own a land, if I have 3 kids, I divide it among the 3 kids. And my 3 kids may have another 2 kids, so that small plot of land is going to divide further,
even further,
right? So ultimately I started with 5 acres, and my kid may have about 40 perch extent of land, which you can't do a commercial agricultural operation.
So and this is the bit about shifting from subsistence level to sustainable.
Exactly. And when you do like small scale, like 40 perch, 1 acre agriculture, you are becoming extremely unproductive, and that's you can't make a sustainable agricultural policy or agriculture for that matter. So that's one reason, and our costing is completely wrong, because we provide water free of charge, especially for paddy, and even if you cost it at 25 cents, according to the research, it consumes about 2,400 liters to produce 1 kilogram of rice. So,
right.
Even I know people complain that the rice prices are about now 200 rupees for samba, but even if you cost the water into it, it will exceed than what we consume right now. And your fertilizer is being subsidized, which you are not costing. Your land prices are not being costed. So if you actually do a proper calculation, our agriculture is not competitive at all, and that's one reason we can't export rice, because if you start exporting, one thing is your pricing is not done properly, and we are not competitive at all, and as a result people are shifting out from agriculture, and then you come and complain, look, we don't have enough people to do agriculture. Of course there will be no people, because it's very unproductive, socially it's not accepted, and you can't earn money because your pricing structure is
so we are what, about a light years away from our farmers riding in the latest Range Rover?
Many decades, I would say, if you follow the same process, because with 80% land ownership, of course about 30% is the now I think it has come down slightly, it's a forest cover, but still about 40-50% is government owned land, and it's completely unproductive. I mean, no one is using it. It's not productively used, and I think the destiny of Sri Lanka will determine based on what would be our future course of action on our land policy.
But Dhananath, when we look at Sri Lanka, we seem to be, it appears to be a place without any proper planning. we have one person who's the Minister of Agriculture, another one who's Minister of Lands, another one who's Minister of Water, and so on. But do you know, in the past we had probably one, and don't you think there's a case to put these main activities like agriculture and all the sort of, this is a la Premadasa, you know, when he turned up for when there were meetings, President Premadasa would have everyone present who was relevant to that topic, and so there was none of this, "Oh, I'll get back to you," because they were there and he insisted. So that sort of thing, don't you think that there's a case to consolidate these ministries in so that they can focus and get the end result right?
Exactly, Faraz. You have to consolidate the ministries, and also you have to consolidate some of the government institutes. And unfortunately, this statement is not going to be popular, but you have excessive labor force in the government sector. 1.3 million, 1.4 million is difficult to sustain for a government like Sri Lanka.
But many of those people got those jobs because they probably voted
exactly
for the right person at the time, whoever that person was.
Exactly, but the entire Sri Lankans, the Republic of Sri Lanka, has to pay for it, and of course we know.
But we are always paying for it.
We are always paying for it, but now we are coming to a critical situation with our debt sustainability, and even if you pay, even if they get the job for us, it's not their salary, it's the quality of living, because they earn about 30,000, 40,000 rupees, and if you go to the market, you know how expensive is your food bill would be. So the quality of living is not reflected just because they have a job. You have to earn a decent amount to have that quality of life, and we have been, according to the statistics, we are about 4.1% under poverty line. But even if you look at Samurdhi statistics, about 50% of our people getting Samurdhi, and that means about 50% of Sri Lankans are pretty much in poor. And I am sure even those who are not getting Samurdhi, they will be just above keeping their nose on that threshold line. So as a result,
is there a case then, Dhananath Fernando, is there a case for our governments, our leaders, to adopt a strategy of that government should be lean and mean?
I think my recommendation would be you limit the government, because the more the government try to engage in so many activities, there will be further complications. I think the best thing that the government could do is leave people to decide what they want to do, and let the people do what they want to do, but just give their land rights, because then they will decide what they are good at and they will do it. When the government tries to decide for ourselves, when they try to decide what we should eat, how much do we have to pay for that thing, then it becomes a complete mess. And I think over the years we have been experiencing how bad was the government engagement in lives of public, and
like the 3 kilos of rice for a family of
exactly
that would supposedly last them 2 weeks.
Exactly. So government should not engage on public life. Let
so
them
government
decide.
has no business to be in business.
Exactly.
Right?
You are spot on, for us.
On that note, we must take a break, but let me tell you that tonight, soon after the primetime news on TV1, is that fabulous program, Face the Nation, hosted by Shamir Rasuddin, and it's a wow panel today. And if you want to watch that and find out what's really going on in Sri Lanka, that's the program you don't want to miss. Tonight, after the news on TV1. Right now, let's go for a break and see what the headlines are in store.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shauketaly.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. We are in conversation with Mr. Dhananath Fernando from Advocata Institute. Now then, the exchange rate from 204 to the dollar came down to 189 in just 2 days. So is there a magician about town, or is this economics at play, or what is at play?
Faraz, first of all, the exchange rate, this is basically, first it depreciated from, I think over the years it has been depreciating, but I'm not a great proponent of the modern monetary theory that the current policy is, because that causes more pressure on rupee. So then the question is, okay, how come it came down to 180s from about 200? That is basically with the
204.
Yes, so that is basically with the loan that we received from China, and you can issue some dollars to the market, and so the demand for the dollars, the supply for the dollars is higher, so then there will be a reduction in the prices. But as you know, a stable currency means it can't depreciate too much, also it can't appreciate this strongly over a couple of days. Of course, it would be better to have a stable rate, but this is it would be very difficult to keep at the same rate, and when it further depreciates, it won't only have a impact on businesses, but also it will have an impact on our reserves and also on our debt sustainability, because our debt to GDP ratio, when the currency depreciates, when you calculate the dollar borrowings and you convert it to rupees, that will have a further hit. At the same time, if you look at, that's why I'm saying I'm not a proponent of this modern monetary theory, because if it's right, if it's working right for us, our reserves should increase, but we are at 4.1 billion US dollars according to the statistics,
and we need around 4.5 billion every year.
Exactly, and I think out of that 4.1 billion US dollars, it's not all utilizable resources or reserves, because you are on an IMF program, you have some reserves as collateral, and on the other hand, till 2 days ago our currency was depreciating and our cost of living is increasing. So if it's right, why we are losing on all three fronts? And also the imports have been controlled on one hand. So you have blocked everything, but still you are losing your reserves, your currency is depreciating, and your credit rating has been downgraded. So the economics behind it is, when you increase the supply of money, I mean, if I give more money, it will go behind imports, regardless whether you blocked imports, because according to our statistics, about 50% of our imports are intermediary goods. For an example, apparel sector needs raw material and ingredients for exports, so they have to import. Without that import, they can't export. And about 30% of our imports are capital goods. So you can't just stop imports, because it's already a material in the supply chain. So when you have excess money, that is going to go behind imports, and you are creating more pressure on the currency. That's basic. So that's what we unfortunately experience for us.
Look, on NEWSLINE we just say it the way we see it, right? So let me just ask the question: do you think that Dr. Jayasundara has got it wrong, or is it that what Dr. Jayasundara is attempting to do is misunderstood by the others? It's got to be one or the other.
Yeah, I'm not sure who is handling the financial policy and the fiscal policy, but the modern monetary theory seems not been working. I think there has been a misunderstanding, because they are following the model of US and Japan, because US printed about $3 trillion as a stimulus package, so has Japan. But for us, they can do it because their currency is accepted all over the world. If I have a US dollar, I can buy anything from any country, but it's not the case for the Sri Lankan rupee, so as for Japan.
And so we are printing rupees, not dollars.
Exactly. If we were to do that, we have to print dollars or Japanese yen. And Japan, their debt is more in the domestic side, and US, their currency is accepted all over the world, so they can afford to do that, which we can't do. I think that's where the misperception, and people think, okay, if US can do it, why can't we do it? But unfortunately, in my understanding and opinion, that's not going to work here, because our currency is not a reserve currency or like a globally accepted currency.
And just moving on to, obviously we're going to have to wait for the economic impact coming from the port city. That's some years away. And it looks like once again the public's attention is being deflected away from the real issues, today's issues, because and everyone's concentrating on the port city and the possible departures from procedure and so on, which is also being tested in the Supreme Court, so can't say too much about that. But in your opinion, how much of FDI does Sri Lanka need now?
I think so far our FDIs have been ranging about 1,750,000,000 US dollars. From the government statistics, they have said they are expecting about 5 billion from Port City.
Yeah, but that's when? When is that?
It will take a little bit of time, but the problem is, I mean,
by then we might be sunk.
Yes, but how I see it is also people have a perception that Port City is going to solve all our problems, which I think we should not be that optimistic. Of course, in my humble opinion, as a special economic zone, we need special economic zones because of the challenges that I mentioned before. But Port City will not solve all our problems, because the investors to bring money, what they expect is political stability, economic stability and consistency in policy. If you are going to bring money, it's not, of course the regulatory system matters, but it's the stability and the other problems that we have to fix in the economy. Because if they won't bring money, if we have to continue with the credit downgrades, if we run out of our reserves, and if the currency depreciates, it would have an impact on the Port City investments as well. So we have to be very careful that to take that reform as a holistic point of view, not like just focusing and forgetting all the issues and believing that Port City is that magic button, that Sri Lanka would be like a different Sri Lanka on the day after when the Port City bill is approved, or whatever the decision that would come out. I think we should be very careful when think about policy, especially not to think the Port City as a magic button.
So it's not the magic button.
It's not the magic button. Of course, it's a good project where we can make it right, but we should not.
But we need to get the fundamentals.
Exactly, right. We have to get the fundamental rights to maximize the benefits of Port City.
Do you think there'll be a case for, the Port City is a government project, okay, and they've got the Chinese and so on, okay. Do you think there is a case for large corporates who might turn around and say, look, you know what, I want a special economic zone because I know what I'm going to do, and I'll be the commissioner and I'll be the king of that little area. Do you think there's a case? Do you think there'll be more special economic zones coming up?
I don't see anything wrong with more economic zones, provided that the fundamentals are right and the people can do business easily. That is not a problem. But I think we have to set the fundamentals right to attract quality foreign direct investments. That's the key. And also with Port City, I think also it's while I'm talking about the economics, the other experts have to shed light on the geopolitical aspect, as well as the other economics and the legal repercussions that could occur. But economic wise, I think the ease of doing business, looking on that front, is the right thing to do, because already our contract enforcement takes 3.5 years, a criminal case would take 9 years, a land case may take about 20 years. So no investor would risk their money with the risk of not having a proper conflict resolution methodology in place. They won't risk their 500 million, $1 billion in Port City without having that proper regulatory framework for us.
And so it's up to the government of the day to demonstrate their commitment to the rule of law, to upholding all matters legal, and to play the game on an international scale if they want to attract international business.
Exactly, and the investors would definitely consider, because they would do their risk analysis, and that would definitely come into play when they make their investment decision. And of course, it has to be a diverse group. It's not like only one part of one country or few countries together. The more it becomes diverse, the better the outcome would be. So we have to, because the fundamental advice on business is don't put all your eggs in one basket. So we have to attract a diverse portfolio of businesses, investors, countries together, and that we have to drive from there. To do that, we have to have the basics right in place.
And considering that this is a sort of a China led project, if you like, because that is what it is, do you think what would the attraction be to Indian corporates?
Yes, I think India, the main the attraction would be the distance wise, and with some of the regulatory barriers already in India, they will consider this as a greater opportunity, and some of the businesses that cannot be done in India will have the access in this special economic zone. And of course now with the Indian operators in the Colombo port and in other businesses like the high-rise buildings in the Colombo city in and around areas, there will be an interest, and we have seen even in terms of tourism numbers, India is one of the main tourist for Indians, Sri Lanka is one of the main tourist destinations. So in that front, India may have an attraction, of course, for the cultural and the distance-wise geographical reasons.
Thank you. It's been very interesting talking to you, Dhananath Fernando. Thank you very much for being on Newsline Live. Now then, just a quick reminder that Face the Nation is on tonight at 9:30, soon after the news from News First. Do watch it. We've got an absolutely super panel who are going to be discussing this very aspect amongst other issues. That's soon after the news from News First at 9:30. In the meantime, take care, have a great week ahead of you, and as always, God bless you.